Hello, everybody. Okay, so today what I think would be fun to do is to try and sort of backfill some tests because we noticed a couple streams ago that I didn't have tests for making real charges with my credit card gateway. So there was a lot of sort of prototype code written early when I was trying to just kind of sketch out a proof of concept for this app. And very quickly I realized I wanted to have tests. But this must have snuck by. So I do have tests in this credit card gateway test, which is the test for my actual Stripe credit card gateway class that goes ahead and tests things related to the token. So I have a test to make sure that I can actually get a token object back from Stripe and make sure that I get the right sort of information from it. And I have tests for like what should happen if the token has no CVC code associated with it, being able to get the correct country, making sure that zip comes back as null if one wasn't provided. And this was sort of used to do some validation of the actual payment token to make sure someone actually filled out the CVC field in the postal code field and didn't try and spoof that in any way. So what I want to do now, though, is write some tests for actually charging. Hello! So we have this class here that does the charging. And this stuff works, and I know that through, just manual testing. But we ran into a situation on the last stream where something broke because I didn't update something here and I had no tests to catch that. And I think that's because we wanted to start storing the payment method and card last 4. So I want to write some tests to make sure that that sort of thing doesn't happen again. And the best way that I know how to do that is to use this concept of contract tests, which is a set of tests that you can use to run against multiple implementations of the same interface. So if we have a real credit card gateway and then a fake credit card gateway, I want to be able to run the same tests against both of them to make sure that they both behave in the same way. If I can do that, then I can feel safe using my fake credit card gateway and all of the rest of my tests, knowing that when I swap in the real one, things should still work. So the first thing that I want to do is just actually write tests for the credit card gateway, the Stripe one, the integration test against Stripe. And then what we'll do is we'll extract those to a contract test and massage it a little bit to make sure that we can run it against both implementations. So the thing I'm actually most interested in is tests for charging. And this will actually be probably somewhat interesting because of the fact that this is something I've never actually done before with Stripe, which is trying to test that funds get transferred using Stripe Connect to the right connected Stripe account. So this is not like a really basic Stripe integration where you would normally just have one Stripe account, someone pays and it goes into Stripe. In this case, if someone pays, I have the KiteTail Stripe account, and then the seller has their own Stripe account, and they've OAuthed with my application, and I want to make a charge through my app that gets funneled all the way to their account. So it'll be interesting to figure out how it needs to work, to be honest. I'm actually not sure how it's going to work. So let's bust open... let's just try and write a test. So if we have a test and we want to say, what do we want to test related to charging? I mean, I want to be able to test that using the credit card gateway, I can call charge with an amount, token, and destination. And I can verify that given a valid token, the destination account received a payment that matched that amount. So let's just make a test called creating or making a charge. And we'll probably be able to come up with a better name after the fact. But for now, I just kind of want to get some things in place and think about what we want to do. So we're going to have the credit card gateway. We're going to use this credit card gateway to make a charge, and that takes an amount, a token, and a destination account. So we're going to have some amount, like say we want to charge $79. And we want to do that with some token. So we're going to have to figure out how to do that. I think I probably already have some helpers for that. Like this will give us a valid test token. So we should be able to do that. Let's just, I wonder if valid test token even needs any parameters. No, it doesn't. Okay. Okay, so we can just say credit card gateway, valid test token. And then we're going to need like a destination account. And this is actually going to be where things get the most interesting. Because I'm not quite sure how we're going to set that up in our test environment. So I think we're going to have to actually do like the OAuth Flow, which is going to be somewhat interesting. I'll expose some environment variables here because it doesn't really matter, because these are all just test stuff anyways, and I can just roll them. So this was a connected account that I had kind of hard-coded from a previous Stripe test account, but I just created a new Stripe test account. So I think we're going to have to connect this account again and just see what data we get. So that's kind of annoying. I can't think of a way to automate that in the tests. It sounds like that's going to have to be a kind of a manual setup step. So let's just kind of see what's going on here. So I have this like old ass unstyled screen where you could call, or you could connect with Stripe and actually go through and do this. So we actually want to connect like a different account. So I should make like a KiteTail seller test account or something. Let's actually do that. So let's create a new Stripe account. We'll say KiteTail seller test. Thankfully, Stripe lets you create accounts very easily. The stream is stalling. That's annoying. If it's stalling for everybody, let me know and I'll restart. But if it's just a couple people and it doesn't seem like a YouTube problem or an OBS problem or whatever, then I'll keep going and hopefully it's just a bandwidth thing. Okay. All right, so we have another Stripe test account created. And this is actually connecting with a different app. Let me think about something here. Let's go to connect and make sure I set some stuff up here. Okay, let's register our platform. So they've changed this a little bit. I'll call this KiteTail test environment. I'll roll all these keys, so don't worry about doing anything. And Dusk would be useful for like the whole thing, but for just testing the credit card gateway, it seems like overkill to me. Okay, so I think we need to put in, see what my endpoint is for this. Integrations. Stripe connect, I think, is what it's going to be. KiteTail.dev/integrations/Stripe connect. I hate this new Stripe UI where there's no save changes button. Like, I guess that's saved, but I feel like compelled to have to go back in there and confirm for sure. And it seems to be good. Okay, so let's get back to this crappy screen and see if we can get this Stripe test thing. Okay, KiteTail test environment. So we want to connect as KiteTail seller test, and we'll skip this account form. And then, whoops, something went wrong. So that's awesome. So again, this is like some more untested old code, just so we can get access to one of these hard-coded keys. So let's see if that even saved anything. It didn't. I must have changed this to debug false. So this is going to fail. Let's see if we can do this again. Undefined index, Stripe user ID. Oh man, this is disappointing that we're going to get stuck in this stuff. So this Stripe Connect testing stuff is actually going to be somewhat complicated. Okay, so undefined index, Stripe user ID on Stripe Connect, line 33. Okay. Okay, let's just dump this and start over here. Buffering. This streaming stuff is tricky. Authorization code does not belong to you. Invalid grant. Weird, eh? Client ID, secret key. We pasted in the new client ID. Let's double check that though. And we'll just get my keys because I can roll them, so it's no big deal. But that, okay, so that is a different key. Oh wait, this is because this is the wrong freaking thing. We screwed up. We registered the platform under the wrong account. KiteTail test environment. Okay. KiteTail.dev/integrations Stripe connect. We'll copy this. Okay, so this is our real client ID. And our publishable key still is different. And we'll get the secret one too. No big deal. Okay. Try again here. So obviously this connect flow is very brittle already, which is fine. It just was a prototype proof of concept thing anyways. It'll get redone to be better. But let's just see if we can get far enough through this flow. I mean, I'm sure that we set up the redirect URI, so... Oh. See, this is Stripe's... the fact that they have no save button, I guess, didn't save or something. Okay, is it there now? Okay, yeah. Really lame. Okay, let's try again. Okay, we're connected. you can see KiteTail seller test shows up here now. So here it is. So this is the external ID that we want. So I'm just going to save that to my environment file here. Stripe testing connect ID. And yeah, cool. Probably we should put that in a config file too. But for now, I think we can just grab it from the environment. Okay, so we're going to have a valid destination account now, which seems reasonable. So let's just add a setup function here. And we can do like this, connected account ID equals env Stripe testing connect ID. We'll just get it that way and just dd this connected account ID and see where we're at. Okay, so we do have the account, which is good. So if anyone ever wanted to run this test suite, they would have to go through that flow manually, which kind of sucks, but it's not the end of the world. So one thing about Stripe is if you look at the Stripe API docs, and look at the charges API, when you go to list charges, you can't, you have to provide like a cursor basically, this starting after thing, to specify which charges you want to look at. Now for us, we basically just want to see like charges that happened during the test, right? So Stripe doesn't give you a way to clear out all the charges at the beginning of a test. They don't let you use the API to delete data. So the best thing that we can do is use this cursor basically to make sure that we only get charges that came after a certain point in time. So starting after, I think, is unintuitive. I think this is like starting after a certain ID but going backwards because it starts with the newest ones first. So ending before, I think, is the one we actually care about. So let's just run this test and see what happens. Undefined variable destination account. So that's going to be this connected account ID. I just want to run it and see if charges show up on Stripe to make sure that things are even working at all. So it doesn't look like anything got transferred through to KiteTail seller test, which is a little unnerving. And it doesn't look like anything made it through here either. So let's try and figure out why that is. All right, so our secret key is V4T, which seems like the right one. If we look at our API here. Oh, we're in the live one. Thankfully, how does this even have a live account? Like the account's not even activated. It has no bank account or anything like that. Oh man. Okay, so a charge did come through. And this one, it still says that I'm in like the live stuff. Seems bizarre that it would default to live when your account isn't active. Okay, so the charges did come through. So that's good. Okay, so what I've done in the past is basically had to come up with some API to let me capture charges that happened during running some other code. And the way that I did that was basically doing something like this. Charges equals credit card gateway charges during. And I specify a callback where I want to capture all the charges that happen while this code runs. And by using this sort of callback API, at the beginning of this function, I can figure out what the most recent charge is and then get only the charges that happen after that. So let's actually drive out this behavior with its own test, because it's easiest to do that way. So something like can capture charges created during a callback. So the trick here is we're going to want to basically stick some charge in there already, and then like make a couple other charges or something. And then basically we want to assert count 2 on charges. So make sure only 2 charges are captured. And then probably something like this, assert equals 7,900 charges 0 amount, something like that. Depending on what our charge thing returns. So yeah, amount and then some of this other stuff. And this will honestly be enough for me to feel comfortable that things are somewhat working. So it's 2 charges. The most recent one is the $79 one, and the second most recent one is the $59 one. So let's just see what we get. It's going to be super slow because it has to make multiple API calls here. So we have no charges during method. So refund is not really being used anymore. Public function, charges during, callback. And basically here, we want to do like get the most recent charge and remember it. And then we want to run the callback. And then we want to get charges created after the remembered charge. Okay, so let's think how do we get the most recent charge and remember it. So Stripe's API docs show like how to do all this stuff with the Stripe PHP class, which is kind of neat. So basically we want something like this. So we want to limit this to 1. And I think we need to make sure we pass our API key as the next thing here. And then we can say the last charge is this. And let's just dump that and see what happens. Make sure that this is working the way we think it should. Okay, so we get a charge object. It has an amount of $29. So that's the right one. And if we dump its ID, I think, we might have to say data 0 ID. And we also probably have to take into account what happens when no charges exist already. Okay, so there's the remembered charge ID. So here we can say last charge ID is going to be equal to something like array get last charge, or kind of sucks that this returns an array even though we only want 1. Recent charges, I mean whatever, we'll rename it, even though we know it only contains one. And then we want to get data.0.id. And if there is none, actually maybe we want to do like array first on recent charges. This will be okay. I think we'll figure it out. And let's just dump last charge ID. This is one of the things that people don't talk about enough with testing, I think, is that a lot of time you have to write a lot of your own test kind of support code. And it's really kind of crucial. So now if we run the callback, we want to be able to do something like new charges. Now we have to provide a limit, so it can go up to 100. So why don't we just do 100, because we're going to provide this ending before parameter anyways. Ending before. I wonder what happens if I pass null here. Last charge ID. And then basically we want to create this same data structure so that we're always working with like a uniform charge object. So let's just do return array map, new charges, and I think it's going to be data, right? New charges, actually callback first to item or charge. Sometimes Sublime pastes things in quite interesting ways. And this will be new charges, data. Okay, so this is kind of dirty looking ugly code, but let's just find out if it's giving us what we want. Gonna restart the stream. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, restarted it. Let's see if it's any better this time. So we need to use this credit card gateway, but I think I'll just pass it into the callback because that's nicer, and people are, or I know I'm going to need that anyways, so we'll just invoke this callback with this. Mega slow test, but we did get the right stuff back. So let's just run it with just the assertions. Sweet. So one thing I want to see, because we haven't really been taking into account the destination account stuff, honestly. So I want to just dump this recent charges thing again and see what data is in there. Like how easily can we find out what the destination account was, or do I have to make like another API call? Because that sounds not ideal. Okay, so it has a destination parameter. So I think I feel pretty confident that as long as we can verify the destination, that we'll be okay. So do we return the destination? We do. Okay, so let's assert that the connected account ID is the destination accounts for both of these. And get rid of our DD somewhere. Okay, great. So we can capture charges created during a callback. So I mean, this is basically the test that we would have wanted to write for this. I guess the only other thing that we want to do is maybe make some assertions about some of the other data that's going to come back in the charge. So we get this charge back here. And I'm trying to think if there's anything we should do, because we're not testing the return value of this. We're kind of just like fetching them again, doing this charges during thing, and making sure that what we get back is correct. So this is kind of like weird, but I'd be tempted to stick assertions inside this callback too. Just because then I know that it's returning what I expect it to return. So let's just duplicate that. Testing stuff that connects with external stuff is usually some of the messier stuff that you have to do, especially to really get the confidence that you want to have. So, I mean, I think that's going to be good enough for me to feel confident that things are working. Like, we might even be able to get rid of some of this stuff. But let's think about actually some of the other things that we want to assert against. So, destination account we're checking, amount we're checking, payment method, and card last four. Now those are going to come from the valid test token. So what we might want to do is use a different token for each one. So let's look at the Stripe test cards. Buffering again. That's sad. All right. Well, I'm just going to try just going to keep going. We'll just see what happens. Const US test MasterCard. I want to basically use some of these Stripe test cards and make sure that we're getting what we expect with the charge. So the credit card gateway has this valid test token method that lets me do some like overrides, right? So basically what I want to do is override the number, in this case, to use a different number. So let's find every instance of US test card here, and we'll rename that to US test Visa. And down here, we'll do a valid token. And what was it called? Number. Where the number here is going to be self US test Visa. And then for this one, actually, let's just duplicate this whole thing, change that value. We'll use US test MasterCard. And you know what? I'm tempted to actually hard code these because we want to be able to see the last 4 digits and understand where they're coming from. So let's just copy them completely. messy test, but it'll prove a lot and give us a lot of confidence that things are working. So this will be 4242. That'll be charge A's card last 4. And card B's card last 4 is going to be 4444. And this, what do we call it? Payment method. I might rename that eventually. Payment method. It's going to be, let's double check what they look like when they come back. Visa. Capital. Does MasterCard appear on here? Yeah, MasterCard. And that's their formatting for that. Okay, cool. All right. So I'll make this MasterCard. And then it seems kind of weird to duplicate this, but I feel like this is the only way I can confidently know that this is returning the right charges. And then this is the only way that I can kind of prove that, we're capturing the charges that were made during this callback and that they're actually being made to Stripe. Because basically what this lets me do is retrieve the charges back from Stripe. This is just like returning whatever we decide to create here, right? There's no guarantee that this is coming from Stripe. And this lets me go straight to Stripe as the source and confirm that the things that Stripe are returning matches, what we intended to do. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about getting into too much detail here, although maybe there is some value in it. I might as well do it. Charges 0. And yep, that's right. Because they're in reverse order. And then Visa for charges 1. And MasterCard for charges 0. Okay, so this test is going to take forever to run, but let's just run it. See what we get. I have a sip of beer. Okay, so I might have mixed 2 of them up. Credit card gateway test line 126. Oh no, I forgot to change this to B. Okay, so probably the code works, but our test was wrong. Okay, green. All right, so that feels pretty good to me. So let's just call this test making charges. I don't know, it's kind of silly, but it's feels valid. And the other thing that we want to do is probably test what should happen if you use an invalid token. So let's call this making successful charges. Let's run another test, something like charging an invalid payment token. And we'll just copy this implementation and then simplify it a lot. So I don't care to do this charge yet. I don't care, honestly, about any of this. All I care about is this throws the exception that I want it to throw. And we don't want a valid test token. So instead, we just want to explicitly pass through something like not a valid token. And then we want to assert 0 for charges. So no charges were made. And we want this to throw an exception. So the best way I can think to do that is to catch the exception here. Payment failed exception. Import that. And then what I like to do is basically just return here, like from the callback, but then do a explicit fail here. A payment failed exception was expected but not thrown. And this is like a lot of time you can use like the expected exception annotation and stuff like that. But in this case, we can't because we still want to make assertions after the fact, right? So the only way that I know to do this is to run the code that should throw the exception, expect that it throws the exception by adding a catch block that lets us continue and make the rest of our assertions. But fail the test explicitly if we get past this line without that exception getting thrown, basically. I mean, another way that you could do that is to move this here, and maybe that's a little bit more explicit because we are early returning then, and it kind of makes more sense. So maybe we'll go with this. Let's just see what happens. Sweet. So that passes. So let's just make sure that we see that fail by just like commenting these out maybe. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm trying to think like what we could do to trigger each one of these errors. I can never remember what causes a card error and what causes a base error. Stripe is it's a little bit tricky to trigger the exact right circumstances. So card errors are the most common type of errors, and then the rest are kind of whenever something else happens. So I feel okay about that. So I think that's probably the most important thing to test for what we're trying to do here. Just these are kind of the two important ones. Like we can do valid charges, but when we try to do charges with an invalid token, it throws an exception. So basically we want to extract contract tests now to try and prove that the fake payment gateway, which is this one here, behaves the same way as the real credit card gateway under the same sort of circumstances. So we want to make sure that if the payment fails, they both throw exceptions, or if the payment succeeds, they both kind of give us back the same sort of data. So let's think where we want to put this stuff. So I've been the assertion can't be in the catch because we actually need to wait until we get this value back. So it has to happen down here. So here we're returning from the closure, not from the test. So this will still run. So lately what I'm doing with my test organization is having a feature folder for all my feature tests, unit folder for unit tests, and then this integration folder, which I'm using for things that integrate with external services that I'm stubbing or faking in other places. So I'm trying to think where the best place to put the contract tests would be. So maybe what we'll do is let's create a folder called fakes or fake tests. It's kind of weird, but basically we want to write tests for the fake credit card gateway, and I want to have like another folder for like contract tests, which are just going to be traits that we mix into these things. So let's start by creating a contract test here called payment gateway tests. And we'll say PHP namespace. What are these namespaces? Tests, contract, trait, payment gateway tests. And what we're going to do here, at least to get started, is we'll start with just the charging tests. And we'll copy those into the trait. And then mix them into this test. So we'll say this should use payment gateway tests. And let's comment out these two tests. And actually, you know what? I'm going to comment out every test in this whole file except for the trait, and just kind of confirm that we're getting two tests running here. So we're not. So contract credit card gateway not found. So we'll go here. We'll import this class temporarily. Import this exception. But we're going to be unimporting that soon, like, because we want this to be generalized, right? So let's just run this again and see if it's back to green. And then basically what we want to do is try and move specific details out of the trait and into this test. So an example of that would be here, where we say new credit card gateway. We want to replace this with something like this get credit card gateway. And then here we want to declare an abstract function, get credit card gateway, so that any class that uses this trait has to declare this. So now if we go back here and run this, we're going to get contains one abstract method. So we can go to here. I'll bring that back for a second. Just copy in this abstract function. And we'll just make this a protected function. Get credit card gateway. And we'll copy this line out. Abstract protected function. And we don't need to assign it to a variable, but we do need to return it. So now, anywhere where we're instantiating a payment gateway, we can defer to the actual test. The fake, and the mock is the same thing. The problem with using a mock is there's nothing guaranteeing that, like, the mock returns the same thing as the real thing, or that the mock throws an exception when the real thing is supposed to throw an exception. So if we write a fake implementation or use a mock, and it doesn't behave the same way as the real thing, and we use that mock in all of our tests, then when we go to use the real thing in production, you might have bugs that you didn't know about. So what a contract test does is act like a much fancier interface, basically. So normally you'd have like an interface for the fake credit card gateway, right? You could say like this implements, payment gateway. And the credit card gateway, the real one, you could have, implements payment gateway. And then they would both have the same methods and stuff. But my experience is that just having the same methods and same method signature is not enough to prove that they both do the same thing. What if the fake payment gateway returns false when a payment fails and the real one throws an exception? That's a problem, because now your code that uses the mock in your tests is going to be expecting it to return false when the real one throws an exception. And if you don't have tests for that, then you don't have tests. So you're relying on remembering how to make things work the same way. I would rather guarantee that things work the same way. So that's why I like having contract tests for this stuff. To me, I think of this fake credit card gateway not as like a mock or anything. I mean, it is a test double, but to me, it's more like just another implementation of, an interface. Like with Laravel, you have like a bunch of implementations of the cache driver, for example, right? You can have a memcache cache driver, a Redis cache driver, a file cache driver, or you also have an array cache driver that works in memory. And all four of those implement the same interface, and they're all expected to all behave the same way, no matter which one that you swap out. So this contract test stuff is just a way to validate that things work the same way when you swap them out in an automated way, so you can actually prove it. So, yeah. So, how's this looking? See, I definitely disagree that you shouldn't make extra code for testing. I think it's important to write lots of extra code for testing to make sure that your tests are expressive and to make sure that it's easy for people to test things using like a sort of toolkit of test helpers that you build for your project. I basically never use Mockery or tools like that anymore. I basically just use fakes now. And everything feels realer when I'm testing it. And I have a better ability to prove that my test doubles behave the same way as the real class. Okay, so that's working. Let's look for other things in the contract test to swap. Okay, so this basically we want to replace with like this get valid visa number or get test visa number. And then we can create an abstract function for that. And we'll do MasterCard as well. And then we can implement those here. And here we can just return self US test visa. And in this one, US test MasterCard. And now the one thing about these contract tests sometimes is when you start trying to extract things to generalize them, sometimes you have to change a little bit about how the test works. So here where I'm able to just like verify that it was 4242 and 4444, now we're going to have to use like code to get the last four digits. What's the easiest way to get the last four digits of a string? Can we do like a subster with a negative index? Is that a real thing? If I do like artisan tinker here and subster hello world -3, so that gives us the last three. So subster -4, that should do it for us. Subster this get test visa number -4, and then same thing for test MasterCard number. Do we capitalize MasterCard the same way? Yeah. And let's just copy that again down here. It's kind of a gnarly test. That's the wrong one. But it's fine. Okay, so anything else look hard-coded? Not really. Okay, so let's run this now. It's going to be so slow. Okay, so there's our two tests. And now we can uncomment all the tests related to tokens and delete these tests. Run all those again. The logic, I missed a MasterCard hard-coded string. Oh, yep. Thank you. Get test MasterCard number. I don't understand the question about doing the logic inside the gateway, like for this sort of thing. Somehow I need to know that, like, I have this. I mean, I guess I could have another abstract method, if that's what you mean, like get test visa number last 4, and then I could move that in instead of doing the subster out here. That's the only kind of change I could think that you could make. To me, it just doesn't feel worth it because, you know, it's the same operation everywhere, and I'd rather like know that like getting the last 4 digits is the right thing rather than defer that to the gateway. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I think both ways would be okay. Okay, so let's create a new test inside the fake folder now. We'll call this fake credit card gateway test. And I'm going to delete all the token tests because we don't have those for the fake yet. But I do want to go through like showing how you can use this same set of contract tests to validate that the fake credit card gateway behaves the same way. So actually there was one other thing that we need to do here, which is this connected account ID. So let's look for connected account ID. Replace all those with get destination accounts ID. And then we can do that. We can fix that in the real credit card gateway here. So this will return, let's just return the environment variable directly. And then we don't even need to use a fancy setup. Let's make sure this still works. Cool. All right. So let's copy all these into the fake one because we were missing one there. And okay, so now instead of returning a real credit card gateway, we want to return a fake credit card gateway. I don't know if the fake credit card gateway has a constructor. Okay, so it has a constructor to be pre-filled with charges. As well as being pre-filled with tokens. So the tokens are supposed to be, I guess, like valid tokens that you can use. Man, I don't even remember how some of this stuff is meant to work. So it'll be nice to have these tests, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, so let's just think about how we want these to work. So I think we're going to want to like construct it with some valid tokens. Now I don't think that these tokens do anything fancy. So we go to charge if token can be charged. So we get all the keys, we make sure that it contains the token and that the unchargeable tokens does not contain the token. So when we create a token, we do that by making a new valid payment token, stuffing it in with any overrides, and getting back the ID. So if we wanted to pre-fill this with tokens, it doesn't seem like it'd be that useful, really, how this code works, because you have to basically copy and paste a lot of this stuff. So I think the easiest way to do this is to kind of just like pre-construct this. So we can say like gateway equals this, and then we want to give it basically create a couple valid test tokens. So we know that the tests are intending for us to have a valid Visa one and a valid MasterCard one, right? So we can say gateway valid test token. Can I type? And it looks like this takes some overrides that get passed in here, and we merge the overrides into the card. Okay, so we don't know the actual card number when we get the token. In this case, just like it's just going to do this last 4 thing for us. So let's think how that's going to work. So we could pass in like some last 4. So say, and then probably a brand, right? Okay. So let's just put in 2 of these. We'll make them exactly the same as the real credit card one for now, and then think about like, is there a more interesting way to do this? So actually, yeah, let's just use these constants even. Now, the problem is like we're going to have to basically do the subster thing, right? So we can say subster self US test Visa -4 and US test MasterCard -4. And then we want to return that gateway. And then for the destination account ID, let's just return like some made up thing. And I'm just going to copy like what this looks like, but we'll make it a little bit different. So you say test account, whatever. Doesn't really matter what it is. And we'll rename this to be fake credit card gateway test, and this will be tests fake. And delete anything we're not using there. And this is namespace tests. So we'll pull that in. Let's just see what happens. It's going to blow up because some methods don't exist. So charges during doesn't exist on the fake credit card gateway. So since Stripe kind of forces us to implement like checking the charges that way, we have to expose that on the fake too. So if we have a function called charges during that takes a callback, I think the best way to do that and with a fake, because the charges are just literally a really brain dead simple collection. And when we charge, we just stuff this new thing in there. I think we can just say something like last charge index is going to be something like this charges count -1, which is kind of funky. Because if there's 1 charge, then the index of the last charge is 0. Actually, well, let's call this start from, and then we don't need to do this. Because if there's 2 charges in there, then we want to start from index 2 because that'll be the next charge after. So we can pass the callback with the gateway. Then we can return this charges slice start from. And I think we're just expecting an array currently. So let's try that. Okay, payment gateway tests line 37. Okay, so something's not working. Expected So did we mess something up here? Pass through the Visa. We pass through the MasterCard. Let's just dump the credit card gateway here. Maybe there's an error in there somewhere. So the last, number. Where's number getting set? Oh, is it because valid test token? We're calling valid test token and overriding number. Okay, got it. So valid test token needs to change in the fake. So we get some overrides. Valid token params with the overrides. And right now it's merging in the number as what is used for the last 4. So I think we actually, this was something I was wondering if we were going to have to do something like this, is basically bake this logic into this gateway. So we're going to want to say subster of overrides array get overrides number, and then default that to 4242 because that's okay. And that might help us. Okay, so now I have number and last 4. It's storing both, and things appear to be okay. I'm kind of wondering why there's only one payment token in there, to be honest. It seems kind of weird. If we dump the gateway here, shouldn't there be multiple? Yeah, kind of funky. So let's look at the implementation of valid test token here. Oh, it's because this is hard-coded, so it's getting overrided. Okay, that's fine. Let's just do, how many characters is that? 24? To make it somewhat realistic, we'll do like test token, and then dot stir random 24. The odds of a collision here are like completely non-existent. Okay, so now we have all the test tokens that we could ever ask for in there. Let's get rid of our dump. Where's our dump happening? Here. Let's see where things are at. Okay, so 38 expected MasterCard but got Visa. So let's look at 38. Okay, so charge B, we use a test MasterCard number. But we're getting Visa back. Interesting. So I wonder why. After this is done, let's dump this gateway again. MasterCard Visa, seems right. 38, 104 to 38. Wonder why that would come back as Visa. I wonder if the fake credit card gateway is just too stupid to create the charge properly. Or maybe retrieve token isn't working properly. Let's comment out this stuff. and dump the credit card gateway here. Okay, so see, it's saving it as Visa. Okay, so there's a bug in how our fake implementation is working. So I think it's something to do with retrieving the token, maybe? So the token is coming back with a brand of Visa, which doesn't seem right now, does it? So why would that come back as with a brand of Visa when we try to get a valid test token? Oh, you know why? Because we're not specifying the brand when we ask for the valid token, and this should be creating it with that brand. Okay, so there's a funky thing going on where we're actually trying to like seed the credit card gateway with these test tokens, and I'm realizing now that like that actually doesn't matter. So I think what we actually need to do, which is kind of like a totally different problem, is have a way in the fake credit card gateway to look up the brand of a card based on its card number, if that makes sense. So when we come in with valid token params and try to do this fancy stuff, we're getting Visa, but we're not overriding that with anything. So we actually need to check the number and override this with something based on like a lookup from the number that comes in if a number is provided, basically. So let's think about how a clean way to do that would be. So basically we want something like brand for card number. And here, what I'm going to do is have an array that we collect, that we look for the number, and we default to Visa. So for any card number that's not in this list, we'll default to Visa. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these into the fake. So that's going to be Visa, MasterCard, and then the Canadian one is a Visa too. So we're going to just get this working, but it's kind of gnarly. So we want to say this, brand for card number, array get from the overrides the number. If there is no number present, then we'll just default to this one. But even if that wasn't in their array, it wouldn't actually matter because we're going to default to Visa anyways. But let's just kind of see if this makes things any better. Okay, undefined offset 0 on payment gateway tests 42. Okay, so it looks like, are we forgetting to return the charges during? No. So this must be coming back with nothing. Oh no, it's just, we need to do values first. I hate keys in PHP arrays when they don't matter. Okay, 5900 matches 7900. So here is an interesting example of why the contract tests are actually pretty valuable, because this is something that would be easy to miss. our fake is returning the charges in the order of oldest to newest. If you look here, like we're expecting to get the newest charge, then the oldest charge. Our fake is returning the oldest, then the newest, but Stripe always returns the newest and then the oldest. So this is like a very subtle difference in the behavior that we might not have caught if we didn't have tests to verify that they came back the way that we expect, you know? So if we go to the fake now, we can say reverse values all, and now we're green. So I think there's probably some things that we can actually change here. Like I'm actually kind of convinced that we can get rid of all this setup and get test visa number and get test MasterCard number. Things are a little funky here now in terms of like there's duplication in the fake and the fakes, or the fake and the test. Like these numbers are duplicated here and they're duplicated here. So what I would be probably tempted to do at this point is to, instead of hard coding card number lookup stuff in here, I'd probably make this take in its constructor potentially like a list of cards. So I could construct it with this stuff, and then I could pass that in from the test, and it wouldn't seem as funky. Yeah, so why don't we try that? So let's add, we have with tokens to construct it with some pre-configured tokens. Let's do with cards. And we'll allow this to take cards as yet another argument here. And we'll collect those. This will just return. We'll pre-fill this too. And we'll change this to cards. And now here, all we have to do is look at this cards get number. And I think we can change this to null. Just not worry about that. Because if null gets passed in here, then we're going to get the Visa default anyways. And then here, we can construct this nicely with cards. And then we can say that this should be a Visa. I mean, this will probably evolve over time. Like, we might want to specify more information about the cards later. But this is at least a reasonable way to get some of that duplication gone and make it a little bit more configurable. So this will get constructed with known card numbers with brands that they match up with. And if we run this now, still green. Run the whole test suite. That's green. Run the real credit card gateway test, which is super slow. And that's green too. So that's a kind of interesting approach that you can use to kind of validate your test doubles and make sure that your test doubles behave the same way as a real implementation. So now from this point forward, what I would work on is taking these retrieving token details tests and moving those into the trait, wherever that is here, so that I could run those tests against the fake credit card gateway as well. And then anytime I wanted to add new behavior to my credit card gateway, I would start by adding a new contract test to the trait, and then run both my real Stripe implementation and the fake implementation and drive that behavior out in both of them and come up with an implementation that feels and looks the same from the outside perspective, but one of them runs entirely locally and one of them properly integrates with Stripe. So that's a cool thing to try out in your own tests, especially when you're working on stuff that integrates with external services. And hopefully that was a fun and informative stream. Let me know what you think in the YouTube comments or on Twitter or whatever. And hope to catch you on Friday at the next one. See you, everyone.